Well, we talk about the cycle of harvest. We had a bit of land, but this area wouldn't have been a corn growing area. Farmers would have grown small amounts of corn just for their own use for years. But then during the war came the compulsory tillage, in which a farm, whatever amount of land you had a certain amount you had to till to grow wheat, because, as you know, it would have been scarce. They'd have had to import to make bread. So that meant that everyone had to grow. And my father and his brother had quite a bit of land, and we used to have about 4 days thrashing. But unfortunately our farms were scattered in different areas, so we would have had harvests in different places. And mainly it was wheat, and you had to grow wheat, and that would be cut about August. At that stage it was cut what they called with the reaper and binder, which was a machine that just cut it and tied it into bundles and kind of spat it out. There was a thing went around and tied the knot to it. I used to wonder how the miracle of how a machine could tie a knot and throw this out. And 2 or 3 men would follow that machine and stand each bundle up on its end, and they'd be put what they call stooks, would be 4 or 5 just in a small thing. They'd be standing and left to dry. Now, it depended on the weather. Sometimes, if they couldn't reach on it to get it in a reasonable length of time, what they made was stacks. Well, that's what was called locally. And these were made a little bit bigger, because the more together, the less chance of getting them wet. And there was a kind of a craft in it of putting them in a certain position that they didn't get that wet. But anyway, then they would be brought and put into what they called a rick, which would be could be a big square. And that again was a highly skilled job, because I only knew we had a man working with us who was very, and wherever he went with helping, he'd be always asked to make the rick, because all the things, it was built in such a way, corn would slip very easy. It was kind of shiny. So you always had it. I remember he always saying, you always keep the outside higher than the inside. You would be inclined to fill the middle of it, but that then caused it would slip on you. So it was always, you kept the inside hollow nearly all the time, going up until you went to the very top. And that would be left then for the convenience of whoever was going to trash it, which came with a thrasher mill, which was a big thing that... Now, my first experience of that was, I was only a kid, but there were people in Tramore named Donnelly's, Billy Donnelly's grandfather. Yeah. They had a steam engine, and they lived in down below the arch in Main Street. Yeah. But very soon, I remember, I can only see it in my mind's eye of this thrashing mill and this steam engine driving it. But then, in a kind of a couple of years, tractors suddenly took over from the steam engine was rather big and awkward, and it wasn't easy.
How did they move it around?
It propelled itself.
It's a big belt on it.
No, but it drove itself. The same as the steamroller on the steam. It's every bit the same. Only it didn't have a roller in front. It had 2 wheels.
Yeah.
And that was how. And there was a belt driven. That was the power. And then when tractors came, which were smaller, handier and everything, so it was driven off a power drive off the back of a tractor. Now, in the setup of a thrashing would be, you would have this big rick of hay, of corn, and the mill would be started, and that would stand. There was a kind of a big hum comes out of it. And 2 or 3 people would throw the bundles up onto the machine. There'd be 2 fellas with a knife cutting the strings that originally tied the bundles, and there was a job then who would feed the machine, and there was a kind of a skill in that, because they pull it, you'd have to feed it kind of easy into the mill because it could get choked if you overfed it. So that again was a kind of a skill that someone knew, and the man that would be feeding the machine would be changed about every hour. There might be 3 of them would do an hour and then another, because you were moving all the time. There were people, and then the corn went through, and there was a different what they call the chaff came out one side, which was just the hull of most of the grain, and there was two big things, like two people in bed. There were two things out the back like this. They were like two fellas in bed because the straw came out over them. It was like two. I saw this. Well, that's as a child seeing. I thought it looked like someone in bed and they were kicking the clothes off their bed because they were bent like that, but they were like 4 feet, and they kicked the straw out the back, and the corn then came down through another chute back at the far end. Straw came out that end. The corn went in over on top. The corn came out one end, and the straw came out another end. And that was another. Then people took that straw and they built another rick of that, and the corn came out and it was put into bags. Now there'd be about 4 or 5 men filling these bags, and that was tough work because they used to have a barrel and 2 men would fill the barrel and they'd tie it, and then 2 would lift it up on the barrel and another man would carry it.
Bags on
his back to wherever.
So very labour intensive.
Oh yeah.
And
Now these bags some of them, I remember them saying that some of them were 18 stone.
yes.
Bags, and men carried them on their backs. And then later, whoever corn merchants, there were different people, would collect it. There'd be agents, say, for whoever, maybe the water flour mills or somebody. But I remember our wheat, Harney's Dunhill, they were kind of grain merchants attached to the pub. They used to have a lorry and they'd collect it and bring it, and that's where the whole process of what went on. But then, of course, the combined harvester came after that, which did all the one job in the one day. But the straw came out the back, and then came an elevator, which was like an elevator in an escalator in a thing that lifted the straw out. But then after that, then came a baler, which it only fed into a baler, and it was made. It was all like the progress I have seen in it. But then the combined harvester came, and you can see today what that did the whole process in one day, or on the one process, and that's about it as I know it.